This is the Environmental Protection Commission, regular meeting Wednesday, July 5th, 2023. This is a regular meeting. The first item of new business is EPC 20-2023, 29 Brush Island Road, DCC Revocable Family Trust, to replace a ramp and floating dock with a piling supporting pier, ramp and floating dock within 100 feet of Holly Pond and other areas of resource. The property lies along the north side of the terminus of Brush Island Road, approximately 1,525 feet west of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map number 56, lot 15. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.850 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the application has made its way to the agenda this evening to mark the start of the review process, the start of the dates on which we can request information and do our detailed analysis and render a decision. Also on the agenda for the purpose of determining if the application warrants a public hearing and if you have any preliminary comments. And staff has already conducted a site inspection, has been working for many months on other elements of this property. This is for a replacement dock on Holly Pond and other areas of resource. And I would be prepared in the next day or two to write a letter outlining any areas of specific interest and concern.
Does any commission member have a question or comment on this application?
I just wanted to know if it was the same as the dock. Is it the same exact type as the dock that the neighbor has next door? That's
Someone back there.
oh, hi. Can he answer?
What do you want to do?
I just-
Have the applicant answer, or wait till
Just a
next time, because we're only accepting the application?
We're only accepting the application, but why don't we have, maybe if everybody has
There's other
comments, and you
questions.
can give maybe 5 minutes.
No, Chair, yeah, why don't you come up and please identify yourself, your name and address, please.
Good evening. For the applicant, I'm John Hiltz. My business address is P.O. Box 47, Row 8 in Connecticut. You had a question about the type of dock and the neighbor. Not the immediate neighbor to the east, but two properties to the east, similar to that. An elevated pier on pilings, ramp, floating dock. Actually, the existing ramp and floating dock are proposed to be replaced. It's simply including the pier.
So is that a like-kind replacement, same length, same dimensions, etc.?
No, it'll extend further into the water. The existing dock was applied for and received authorization from the Connecticut DEP. The applicant was an LLC that apparently purchased the property with the intention of selling the property shortly thereafter. It's not uncommon in these kind of instances to see this type of dock constructed basically quick, easy. The state permitting under a 440 dock is much quicker than under a structures and tidal wetlands permit, obviously. So that being the case, they quite often do that so they can have a dock in all the marketing literature usually, and you'll probably notice that that's often taken at high tide. So in any event, the current owner has the property, realized that the dock is somewhat insufficient for his boating purposes, and asked me to, do the applications to, do what we're doing now.
Anybody?
One other question.
no possibility the lights will be put on that dock, right?
I see no reason that there will be. If you have a prohibition against it, I'm sure Mr. Carey is fine with that. There's
We're trying to get a little more sensitive in pond areas about all the lighting, and that house has massive amounts of lighting as it
Exactly.
is.
So, sure.
Kind of,
Not necessary, and I mean, it's, given the kind of restricted navigation involved with Holly Pond as a whole, I don't think you'd want to be going in and out of there at night anyways, given the weir over the exit to the waterway.
Yeah, you're not really going to get, you have to have awful shallow draft to get,
Yeah, I mean,
because normally you can see the
it's-
wall, so
what is
you're not
it?
going
It's,
to.
the low water line is NAVD plus 1.42, I believe.
Mhm.
So if, high tide, a mean high water is, around 3, obviously, yeah, you're definitely tided out in most parts. For the most part, people go tooling around in the pond itself.
That's off, yeah.
And, you can obviously get in and out, but you're very restricted in terms of access.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions, or?
Commissioners? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, John. Next level of business is EPC 2123, 2 Harriet Lane, S. Pancati and P. Tulesi, to construct an elevated condenser platform and related features within a special flood hazard and proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Harriet Lane, just north of Tokenique Road, is identified as map 36, lot 22. The zone is R1/2, and it is approximately 0.66 acres. Just out of curiosity, when I was out there, the condenser's in, and they're going to raise the pad. Okay, that normally would be handled as you would handle that directly as opposed to bringing it out to the commission
Well, we just
as an
started,
agent approval.
as we do, there's a possibility we could do it as an agent approval, we get whatever information that we need, so.
Okay,
As I start, it may return to you next month as an
Agent.
agent approval.
okay, fine,
But again, it makes its way on the agenda.
got it. Okay,
Start the time clock, and if you have any particular areas of interest.
no, I'm fine. Anybody?
No, I guess this is a new condenser, and I guess the installer didn't understand the siding requirements, or in terms of elevated, that'd be my question.
It is a new condenser that was installed without a proper permit, so.
Understand. Okay,
And so,
so we're here to remedy the
Yes.
deficient or lack of permit scenario.
Anybody else have any questions? No? Great. We'll move on. The next item of business is EPC 22-2023, 26 Parsons Walk, E. Panagias, to construct a fence in and proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the south side of Parsons Walk, approximately 975 feet west of Old Paris Road, and is identified as map number 20, lot 31. The zone is R1, and it's approximately 1.41 acres.
again, it's an item that's made its way to the agenda in order to start the statutory time clock for the review, and for the commission to determine if it requires a public hearing on the application, or if you have gone to the site. I have been to the site on numerous occasions, and I can accept your ideas, and I'll put them into the form of a letter and make it as a request for information as we initiate the review of this particular application.
Okay, anybody, any commissioner have anything?
When was the pool built? Did that go through EPC approval before, like recently, or do we have any way to find that out?
The only thing that I do know is that there was, the house was demolished, and it was a new reconstruction of the house. The pool was there, as with some of the other facilities. So our involvement most recently was for a brand-new house on the property, and its attendant facilities, drainage, utilities, et cetera. The pool was there, and a fence was there.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know about that one.
Mhm.
So I guess in the diagram, I'm seeing a series of red dots, which I think are where the proposed fence might be. And the question I would have is it so necessary to have a pool fence that extends to the boundary of the property? Because we could have a pool fence here that wouldn't so much encroach into the wetlands. That would be my question.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay,
May I add?
That's,
Sure.
Mrs. Pym, yes.
sure, why don't you come up? Yep,
Stand up,
please,
please.
please
I get
identify
nervous.
yourself.
Can I just
Please-
talk from here?
Please identify yourself and your address, please.
Hi, I'm Ellen Panagias from 26 Parsons Walk. I wanted to do two things at the same time, is do a property fence as well as make it a pool fence. We purchased the property, we're older people, we don't have young kids. So I'm most concerned about having the pool fence, meeting the codes, but also about safety. There are woods in the back, and I haven't even been all the way in the back, but I would like to fence off the property so no one can surprise us right at the pool, which is right close to the tree lines. We're not going to touch anything in the back because we love, the area that it's like a conservation area. It's pretty. While I'm at the house, we haven't moved in yet, actually, half moved in. But there are kids from the adjacent street, and these are just what I've witnessed, that walk through the property. So anyone can really come in from the street next to us. And it's a concern. So that's why I would like to fence off the property, so at least it's a deterrent. And the pool is there, so at least if it's around, and the pool, the way it was constructed, we didn't do this, it was there. It's kind of like right in the middle of the available property. There really isn't a lot of property. I don't know, Rick can tell you, but a lot of it is just the trees and the conservation area in the back. So if you put the fence near the pool, it allows people to come through on both sides, and it's right there. You come off the patio, it's right in the middle.
Do you have a pool cover?
There
Or are you considering a
was
pool
a
cover?
pool cover. I was told that there's new state regulations and that they may not accept pool covers any longer, and not to do that. I defer to you and state rules.
Okay, well, as I understand it, there's a specific type of pool cover that insurance companies, because it's generally guided by the insurance, that the insurance companies are satisfied with, that, you go in, you coat it, and covers uncovers, and that people can walk on it now. I find it difficult to believe, I'm not going to test it out, but I understand that people can walk on it, and you can have that in lieu of a fence.
I went to the building department to find out what the requirements were for the fence. And I was specifically told there, is it Mike? Rick, I forget who you sent me to speak to, Mike, right? And he said that he did not recommend that. He said that by the end of July, there's going to be something coming out from the state, if I remember correctly, you may ask him, that they don't want to do that anymore. They say people are forgetting to put the covers on. There's been safety issues.
Surprise.
And they're going to not allow it any longer. And also, people who have it, they're going to make them put in a pool fence. So he told me not to eat. Plus, I do not.
Good,
but,
I believe in pool fences.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
so,
and I do
and
too.
so-
I would rather have a pool fence that I know is there. To me, it's safer than,
Okay.
having, I wouldn't want to say my husband forget to put the cover on, but anyway. I may forget. We'll leave it at that.
Okay, no, thank you for your,
Thank you.
is there any, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I don't see this as a pool fence. I see this as a perimeter fence.
I was hoping it was both.
I understand, but a pool fence would be narrowly restricted to the pool area. And one of the things we look at is if there are prudent and feasible alternatives to having a mass encroachment on a wetland area. But I understand the application and understand your explanation.
And a secondary, I mean, safety was my number one concern. And number two also is, you know, I mean, I love deer. And if this way, I tried to pick a fence that's open almost 4 inches. It has to be a little less than that for code. I tried to find something that would allow as much egress of water and the animals as possible. But also for safety for deer, it would at least also prevent a barrier for the deer, you know, so that way at least, you know, I worry about Lyme, so safety and also for like, you know, disease like that. And if you were to look at the property, to make the fence even come in a little bit, it's really only, we're talking, I don't know, 10, 15 feet on each side. And so the deer can come right through, you know, strangers can come right through it. That's why I'm requesting it.
So, and I apologize, I might ask you to go up to the microphone
sure.
again, but is there a destination that these, I'll call them trespassers, are using? Or is there a reason they're using your property to go from point A to point B?
I'm a new person there, but it's usually kids that live on Edward Place, and they're going, I think it must be shorter if you're coming through West Avenue, to just go right through, I guess. If they're living on our end of the, we're at the end of the cul-de-sac, I have no idea why.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners?
Have any actions been taken to discourage the trespassers? Like
She doesn't live
signs
there.
or anything? You don't know?
I don't go all the way back there.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
scared of, not scared, but it's like, I have a knee injury, and I'm actually officially, you know, I still go to physical therapy and stuff, so it's too uneven for me. We have like brick laid out, like I won't go past anything that's level, so, and that's another issue. If something, I cannot run officially. I mean, I'm officially disabled, although I can walk, this is after like 10 years of therapy. So I can't run. So if something were to happen, someone were to come, I can't get away. You know, so I'd like to have some notice.
Mm-hmm.
But-
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Okay. Moving on to old business, EPC 5-2023, 17 Nickerson Lane, M. Ross and K. Ross, to construct a new single-family dwelling, drive, walkways, terraces, water service, sanitary sewer, swimming pool, walls, and other related features in a special flood hazard area and proximate to Holly Pond and other areas of resource. The property lies along the south side of Nickerson Lane, approximately 800 feet west of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map 52, lot number 9. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 0.9799 acres. I believe the members have received the a draft of the resolution. No? No.
Yes.
And so,
May I just offer
Sure.
a couple comments? If you recall that this has been before the commission since, I believe it's February of this year, is the commission determined at that time that a public hearing was necessary based on not only interest, but the potential for a significant impact on regulated areas. If you recall, 10-second scenario, it's a waterfront property in Holly Pond with areas of tidal wetland and other coastal resources, including pretty significant other resources, including a fairly dense number of large trees on the property as well. So the first initial session of the public hearing was conducted on March 29th. There was a second session that was in May 17th. And then the final session was on June 7th. And at that time, the commission determined to close the public hearing and to direct staff to draft a resolution for consideration. And we testimony, significant testimony had been provided for the various issues and questions and concerns that have been raised in the board, ranging from impact on drainage and water quality and flood protection and the quality. In fact, a great deal of time had spent on the quality of the mitigation plan that had been presented. What is needed in your discussion deliberations on this evening's application is, because it was a public hearing, because it was a determination of there's a potential for significant adverse impact, it is the commission's charge to have a finding of no prudent and feasible alternatives having less of an impact on regulated areas. That is section 10.3, and you need to enunciate that on the record if that's the belief that you hold. The other thing is under section 10.2, I believe it is, there are certain findings that the commission finds no significant impact, if you believe this is true. So a review of the draft resolution that was presented, and I can tell you that it was based on my observations, what the commissions had directed. I went back and listened to both or all three audio tapes and videotapes to pick up things that were commitments in terms of potential conditions of approval is contained in that resolution. If the commission determines to entertain a motion to deny the application, they must state on the record under section 10.4, for instance, if there are prudent and feasible alternatives, what types of prudent and feasible alternatives that they can test in the event they want to come back and make a subsequent presentation to the board. With that, I turn it over to you, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, Peter, you want to get started?
Yeah, I'm interested in whether we've heard everything, and we certainly had the public hearing, and that would have been the appropriate forum, but I think Attorney Amy Sabatakis said she was going to submit something written to the commission, and I haven't seen anything written from her. So,
No, well, I have to remind you that the public hearing was closed.
Yes.
That there had been two, I believe she had prepared two written items that are in the record already. So there was nothing new that would have been prepared for this deliberation on the application.
So there was nothing in addition to what's already been submitted, because I do remember some submissions by her, but it didn't.
Yeah, the record was not left open for the submission of any new or additional information. It was closed.
So I guess the question I have, and this goes back to prudent and feasible, is the size and scope of the development. And there have been reductions since the original proposal. There was some testimony that the pool could be kind of a point in terms of wave action. However, I'm going to come down to our record being complete with Mr. Canis's submission, which I think all of his issues were addressed, I think, if I recall correctly. So I don't think that For me personally, I'm not seeing any additional actions that could be taken. However, I could be persuaded that the size and scale, particularly around the pool area, should be diminished. That might be a prudent and feasible action that certainly wouldn't diminish the development from a living space point of view. But I would weigh very heavily on our engineer's report.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm prepared to approve the resolution. I think they managed to do the things that we requested in that time period as best we could. Yes, it's at large, yes. But I think they answered both the in-house landscape architect individual who was excellent, Pop, I think his name was.
Yeah, Matt Pop.
And he kept poking and poking, and they got all that resolved pretty well. And as well as the engineering that we had as well, so that's my stance.
Were all of Matt Pop's questions resolved, all of the issues?
Yes.
Were resolved?
He started with 46,
Yeah.
as I recall, and by the end of it, he had a statement that that he was satisfied because they had reduced the path,
Yeah.
the planting plan had been, made much more robust. Okay, they submitted a second planting plan in the last hearing, and that he was satisfied with that.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt was very persuasive in my judgment. So.
And for the record, I did watch the video of our last meeting, so I will weigh in on this one. What they didn't address were the additional trees, right, that we had asked for, the larger trees to be planted. And I don't know if they said they're going to try to work it in somehow, and then we talked about the oak tree. You guys talked about the oak tree.
Yeah. First of all, was the oak tree within our jurisdiction? Because that was a question mark that we had, because if it's not within our jurisdiction, then
I think you said it
but
was.
I wasn't sure.
You said it was in the last meeting, as far as I remember.
I don't recall.
Either way,
Mm-hmm.
there haven't been any properties where I've been upset to go to, and I was upset here. And there's so many trees that are taken down, and there were so many animals running around, and I'm not. There's got to be some more they can do with, at least including those additional 7 trees and keeping that oak tree would be helpful to kind of push me in the other direction. But and Alan had asked for new stakes. I think. Did you see the new stakes? Did you go back out there? I went out there
I don't think
yesterday, but I didn't.
No,
see
I don't
new
think they were
stakes.
ever told they needed to.
But there's blue bands around everything. Everything's coming down. It's just and he said he was going to have a meeting with planning and zoning, and they're going to talk about the tree. And I just want to know, definitively, is the tree staying? Is it going? Are you planting the new trees? I just want some clear clarity around the things that are kind of up in the air before we can make a decision. Am I?
Well, the one thing is, it's a vacant lot.
Yeah.
And it's pretty prominent in the sense of it's on top of a hill, and so he's been taxed as if it was a building lot,
Mm-hmm.
and so he has a legal right to develop it, okay,
Yeah.
and according to the planning and zoning regulations. So and is it a shame that it gets so? Yeah, I feel sorry for the guy who's across the street who used to watch the sunsets,
Yeah.
okay, and say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, okay, and so he won't be able to do that.
But
Yeah,
our point is to have the most minimum amount of impact on the environment, right?
within our jurisdiction.
Within our jurisdiction,
Yeah.
sure, of course.
Yeah,
So that's kind of where I'm.
well, the question is, it's minimum impact, but is it significant? is, will it create significant long-term harm to the environment? And I think that's the question we have to address, okay? Because that one we can hang our hat on, and in my mind, we've had the experts, Matt Pop representing the town. We also have Land Tech having their people there, and basically those are the experts for me to come back and say when Matt Pop and Joe Canis came back and said, they're okay with it, the calculations are good, et cetera, et cetera. At that point, we have to rely on the experts, okay? Because we're not, as your gut may be telling you one thing, and so, and I think when their initial proposal of 4 feet from Holly Pond was, and it'll take me a while to forget Bill Wright's or. Okay, that it was like they knew that wasn't going to go anywhere, and so we did what we had to do. Okay, through all the meetings and hiring in of experts to whittle this back to where it was, to where is this going to create significant? Is this going to have a long-term significant impact on the wetlands in Holly Pond?
If they were to come to us with what they have today first, instead of that outlandish, crazy plan, ambitious plan that they had in the beginning, would it have been immediately approved the way that we're, and I don't know, would we have had more questions to dig in this far? I'm a little.
Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. I don't have the answer to that. But you don't have to, don't feel you have to vote yes or no. Oh, there's no reason that we have to have unanimity.
Yeah.
Okay, I prefer to show unanimity in to say that there's a consensus, but there's no need to. When I joined the commission, there were a number of ones where I just said no, and so feel free to.
That's healthy in a way.
To vote the way that you want.
I do put a lot of weight on the town's engineer report, though, and I think if Matt Pop's questions have been answered, I think that to me is a heavy weight to factor into this deliberation. So I think could it always be smaller? Yes, but and I appreciate the neighbors' sense of wanting to perhaps preserve a view, but that's not really our consideration for this decision.
And there is sightline there that is that was part of the land, part of the deed when they split it up, wasn't it?
Yes.
Rick, that they had a
The neighboring, yes.
that
easement.
So anyway, so I don't know. Do we want to make a motion to approve and then we'll vote as the way I'm as a chairman, I would have much more appreciated if we had 7
Yes.
tonight rather than 4.
Right.
And so and that's a shame that it's in the middle of July, and so I think whatever the vote with 7 would have been better than with 4. I have to admit that. So anyway, Peter.
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution as provided on EPC 5-2023 at 17 Nickerson Lane.
Bill, second.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Okay.
3-1 in favor.
3-1 in favor. Thank you. Moving on to if you want to pull up your things. You want to pull up that because, do we need her?
Oh, you done, Groovy?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Okay, moving on, we have EPC 14, 2023, 16 Hamilton Lane, T Havoc and K Havoc, to install a fence in and within close proximity to the wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. The property lies within the south side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 780 feet west of Brookside Road, and is identified as map 10, lot number 23. The zone is R1, and is approximately 1.058 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, this application is again a fence in and within close proximity to wetlands, watercourses, and special flood hazard areas. Just as a means of describing the site characteristics, they're outlined in the agenda summary report, but as a residential property that currently supports a single-family dwelling, a paved drive, walkways, patio, shed, and other related features. It's served by sanitary sewer and public water. The site is characterized by gently to moderately sloping developed uplands. There's wetlands that are maintained as manicured surfaces, lawn, also wetlands maintained as woodland, and many large trees. There is a watercourse that generally parallels the south property boundary. That watercourse generally flows northwest to south, northeast to southwest, and eventually is tributary to the Goodwives River. The vast majority of the property, with the exception of the areas in the approximate center of the site, are also within the special flood hazard area. Essentially a backwater area, it's ponded water, with the most severely flooded space along the rear property boundary, less substantial flooding around the dwelling. In fact, the dwelling may, at this point, for the most part, be outside. The applicant proposes to install a fence along generally the site's perimeter to the rear of the dwelling to limit the influence and impact of deer and other forms of wildlife, and to provide a protected space for the enjoyment of the property and certain recreational uses. The fence is comprised of two elements: a 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence along in the proximity of the home, and an 8-foot-high, what they call plastic wire, or known as plastic wire deer fence, along the remainder of the site. The fence will affect about very grossly estimated, about 180 square feet of wetland, about 203 square feet of the upland review area, and about 525 square feet of the special flood hazard area. And that's just computed based on what we've generally used as a linear foot of fence. It occupies about 1 square feet of space in of regulated area. The applicant reports that they intend to work around existing trees of size in the rear of the property, and will be elevated in select areas to allow for the continued passage of stormwater and movement of small, more desired forms of wildlife. A Connecticut engineer has verified that the fence as proposed will not exacerbate flooding conditions on the property, or will impede drainage, or will significantly contribute to a post-storm debris field. So in your, the applicant is here this evening. Things that the commission should be cognizant of, and it's as a presentation may be made, is looking to, is the fence going to meet the applicant's design objectives as proposed? What are the resource impacts? The impacts the fence may have on the dynamics of the flood, what the impacts the flood waters will have on the fence and the generation of storm-related debris, the ability to maintain the free flow of water in both water courses and overland areas, and the capacity of desirable forms of wildlife to access and move about the property in regulated areas. And of course, as we noted in some of our prior discussions this evening, the question of alternatives often comes into play in the board's deliberations. I'm available to answer questions. The applicant is here this evening.
Do you want to stand up, please? Please let us have your name and your address, please.
Sure. Kate Havoc, 16 Hamilton Lane.
Do you have anything to add to?
Oh, sure. One piece I'd like to add is we're currently in conversations with FEMA around the flood designation in the back of our property. We've lived there for about 3 years, and when we moved in, the prior owners had been there about 12 years. And flood insurance is contingent upon our homeowner's insurance. And when we purchased the property, the prior owners told us that they had never had any flooding issues whatsoever in or near their property. And so about a year or so ago, I reached out to FEMA to begin conversations about why our property is designated as a flood. It requires flood insurance in a flood zone area. I think with climate change that the pre-existing river that used to flow behind the rock wall, the exterior of our property, there is no water there, and there has not been water there in the 3 years that we've lived there, even with storms, rain, the little snow we've had. So I think that with the way that sort of our climate is changing and the land and topography is changing, it may be well also that our property and the designation of a flood zone may also be changing. So that's just something to sort of make note of, that we're sort of talking with FEMA as well.
Well, I think it's a farmer's drain. You know, Hamilton area and Rabbit Lane were all very, very mushy, if you will.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so what they did is, so what the builders did when they developed that whole piece was to dig a couple of farmer's drains in order to drain some of the water off from the property, so they could essentially. I know you're on sewer now, but back then it was a septic field, so they needed to create some space so they could put in the septic field. So, yeah, okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
I had a question kind of related. So when were do you know when the wetlands tests were done, and if they plan on changing those in conjunction with the flood zone, or?
No, so we're not planning on changing the wetlands designation. We actually did the survey ourselves as the homeowners.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did that about a year or so ago.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I guess I'd like to add one more thing.
Please.
So we are staunch environmentalists in our home. We severely care about the environment. I know I've mentioned in our application that we have converted our home to geothermal, and we've also added solar panels. So I know that they're not directly connected, but I do think that they correlate to our care of the environment and our care of the trees, and we're not trying to impede on any sort of environmental water movement or animal movement, but we do have coyotes and bobcats, and we have 2 little kids, a 4.5-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl, and a little French bulldog. The neighbors behind us, the Heidis, who live on Rabbit Lane, I reached out to them to tell them we were in the process of getting a deer fence, just to let them know from like a neighborly perspective. And they told us that their little dog had been killed by a coyote a year prior to us moving in. So it's, our dog is like our pet, family member, so that's the impetus behind our request here.
David?
On the agenda, there's also the next item is 14 Hamilton Lane.
Our neighbors, yeah.
This is totally unconnected. The two of you don't have a
Yeah, well, I've mentioned they moved in about a year after we moved in, and we've talked. When I see a coyote, I let them know because their kids are often out in the backyard, and I just say, because it's in the daylight, we've seen them, and I'll just send a text like, hey, FYI. I don't know I don't want to speak on their behalf for their application, but we are not sort of.
There's no joint.
No, that's not a joint application
because
anyway.
the schematics appear that they're totally independent requests, but I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a neighborly sort of.
Yep, thank you.
So I'll just give a couple of examples of what I've done. I too have a 2-year-old and a 10-pound little puppy, who is my other child.
Yeah.
And so I set up all throughout my backyard, and I have an acre that we have every wild animal you can imagine. Set up a bunch of motion activated sprinklers in the backyard, and I set up a bunch of cut out animals, and they spin around and they scare everybody off. mainly for the geese, but also everybody else. And so, you know, so that's been really helpful. And then I have a small yard, a smaller yard for the dog, you know, and we play out there. And so, you know, that was an alternative for me, certainly. You know, a 6-foot fence, I know because I have wetlands at my house. You know, I don't personally, and I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just giving you my perspective from my house and personal experience. That, you know, I don't want to infringe upon those bigger animals' access to the wetlands and the water and that area as well, where it's all a little ecosystem, right? And Barbara will tell you about ecosystems too. But you know, that's kind of how I see it. I wouldn't want to fence in the whole yard because I don't want to separate myself from and separate them from that, right?
Yeah, so I actually reached out about a year and a half ago to the town around different alternatives, and they recommended the water sprinkler system as an idea. And we thought about it, but it doesn't really work with how the property is laid out because we have a play set towards the back of the property. And if we're putting sprinkler systems out, the kids are going to get wet or the dog's going to get wet.
So check this out. I have mine on an app.
Okay.
And they turn on and off,
Oh.
so you can turn them on and off. So there's like different. I'm just putting
No,
it out
no,
there.
it's
There are
helpful.
alternatives. That's all I'm.
That's helpful. I mean, I think we have kind of come to the point as a household that where we feel like a fence would be the best solution for our property and for how we feel as a family with safety in terms of the animals. Groundhogs, chipmunks, we love them. Fox, coyotes, bobcats, we don't. And I understand that there is an ecosystem and we don't want to disturb that, but there is no water that they're coming towards in the back of our land. There is no stream there. And so sure, they're probably traversing the lands, the properties around. Our neighbors though, on the west side of us and the south side, not on Rabbit Lane, I don't know the name, it's off of Overbrook, both have deer fences. And so, you know, our backyards are all wetlands, they all abut with one another. I don't think that our placement of a deer fence would negatively impede on the movement of animals in a way that they're already not being sort of diverted from pre-existing fences that are there. I thank you for the ideas, I appreciate it. I just, for our perspective, we've toyed with the idea of placing the fences in a different area in conversations with Rick, and we thought about putting it sort of along more of like the grass line in the backyard, but it blocks the shed and it blocks the playset and it blocks the garden. And we have like compost. We're constantly going back and forth into the backyard. The dog's out there. We have an invisible fence because we did that at first because we didn't want to do the fence. Like we 3 years into this, we're trying as best we can, and we've kind of come to the point where we don't see any other solution that will work for our property. And it is a slight disappointment. I love the deer. I love seeing the deer. We have names for them, and we do. One of them has a limp, and we call it Gimpy. I'm like, oh, there's Gimpy. Oh, we'll see Gimpy in the front, not in the back anymore. But ad nauseum, we've talked about this internally as a family, and there hasn't been a solution that would provide us the sense of security or feeling that we feel a deer fence would provide. Also noting our commitment to the environment, like we're not going to do anything negative to harm it as best we can.
No other questions?
All right, went to the property today and saw there was a bird feeder.
Yes,
Okay,
I will take the
I
bird
was gonna
feeder
mention
away.
that, say is, you know, that tempts, you know, squirrels, coyotes and bobcats love squirrels. You wanna take away all the temptation from there, because otherwise, the animals, you know, coyotes are smart, they're gonna find a way in. Okay, there's just, you know, nature, and that's a banquet for them.
Yep.
So you wanna make your property, in that sense, less attractive.
Sure.
That'd be one thing I would do to do it. Also, I note that while there's wetlands there, the stream is actually on your south neighbor's property.
Yeah, the rabbit, the Heidi's on Rabbit Lane, yeah.
The Heidi's and I think the
Yeah.
Haze's are the next ones over.
Okay,
And so, you know, they have much more streams and basically, there, I think that, I personally don't have a problem with this, but, you know, I think that if you put the fence up there that you suggested, it's the deer fence, and, you know, somehow you can let the little critters, you know, figure it out, how to come underneath and stuff like that, you know, Bill always makes this point, to have a fence down to the ground, okay, so nothing can creep and crawl underneath, and, you know, you know, I think that's, you know, smaller creatures, you know, like, you know, should have access, and I think you answered that. So,
Sunray is the name of our groundhog, so I don't want him to go near.
anyway, does anybody else, any other
Can I,
question?
I'll just offer a few comments?
Sure.
I think, you know, it is always a balancing act. It's a balancing act of, you know, what's the charge of the commission is to protect wetlands and water courses and to not exacerbate flooding conditions and, you know, do all those protections. And it's a balancing act, you know, for that security that homeowners, you know, strive for in this, it's a fairly, you know, urbanized space, despite the fact that, you know, we have trees and streams and wetlands and water courses and flood hazard areas all over the place. I think the absolutes here are, and even on the subsequent application, the absolutes are, we don't want to segment the most critical of the habitats. So it may be prudent to set it back from the edge of, even if it's an intermittent stream, set it back some linear distance. It's you know, I think this is a compromise. You set it back some distance. It doesn't have to be to the exact, you know, to the grass line that's going to be an impediment to the useful space that they have, but it should come back as away from the edge of these wetland water course kind of corridors, intermittent or not. No crossing of wetlands and water courses. It just is a matter of.
On her property,
Right.
there's no crossing of water
That's what
courses.
I'm just saying as a
Yeah.
general principle,
Yeah.
no crossing of wetlands and water courses with the fences because of the debris trapping, et cetera. I also think is incorporate into the designs, you know, where it's feasible, is, you know, you have space that's going to allow for, you know, the passage of stormwater. And most of these fences are going to be not solid on the bottom. I mean, from what I've seen, this is not the case here.
it will be permeable, it will be,
So
it will
it'd
be
be
penetrable
permeable
through
and,
water.
you know, in select areas have, you know, free passage for the small critters, the turtles and all that. But protect the stream corridors. Also, get it out of the most flooded space on the property. If there's, I think on certain parts of this property, there might be 5.5 feet of flooding in the deepest portion in the 100-year storm, is maybe push it back some number of feet from the edge of those water courses outside of the most deeply flooded space, no crossings, and to the extent feasible for allowing for overland flows and the passage of the more desirable forms of life.
I guess the question would be, when we had the two 500-year storms, Elsa and, I forget what, anyway, I'm not sure you were around at that time when the town was flooded out. If there was, you know, what happened to your property?
Last summer in July, there was those massive flooding where the roads were closed. It was actually right before, or no, it was 2 years ago. It was right
2
before
years
we had
ago.
our daughter. Yeah, because we were driving back from the doctor. But we had no flooding on our property. We have a puddle of water that sits on the land, and it is now there. It wasn't there before they built the new house, and they created the berm with the arborvitaes. So the new design of the property caused a little, I wouldn't even call it a puddle, might be generous. It probably was 1 or 2 inches deep, and it now seems like it's 1.5 inches to 2.5 inches deep as a result of the berm that was placed. That wasn't we weren't involved in those decisions, and we weren't unfortunately able to give feedback at the time when that was being constructed and decided, but we don't have any, it's amazing, we've actually never had any flooding. The house that was built in 14 flooded during that storm, and we had no water anywhere on our property. I mean, except right next to the berm, because it prevented the flow of the water that used to be able to go between the two properties.
Do you have a sump pump in your property?
We do, yeah.
How often do you hear it tick on?
It's never, it went on one time during that storm, but it has never gone on. We actually, the geothermal units that we have, we put in the crawl space, and they sit on the floor of the crawl space, and we have like a little bit of sort of a rock moat that we're gonna put around them just from water protection purposes. But they were very expensive, like extremely expensive, and we felt confident enough to put them in the crawl space on the floor, cement wise, because we do not have water issues.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah.
Well, if it doesn't flood during the 500-year event. No.
Hey, Rick, is that puddle, is that considered a water course then, according to the definition?
No, there's wetlands that are based on soil types, and then they have,
So
just
if it
off-site,
doesn't
there is an
go-
intermittent water course.
Okay, so she does have the intermittent water course on.
No,
It's
just
on the
off-site.
neighbor's
It's just
property
on the
behind
neighbor's
us.
property.
Off-site, it's not on the
Right,
property?
it's right on the property
Okay,
boundary.
got it.
Yeah, they
Well,
have a
they-
stone wall,
there's
they
a
have a
s-
stone wall, and then
The
3 or 4
stone-
feet, and then there's the,
Got it, thank you.
We're gonna put the fence in front of the stone wall. It's not gonna be touching the stone wall. It's not gonna be on the stone wall. It's gonna be placed in front of the stone wall to the best of our ability. We're not taking down a single tree. Like, I love the trees in the backyard. They are going to move around the existing trees and everything that exists. We're not touching anything. I don't care if the fence has to kind of, sort of, one post is here and it's not even. But it's in front of the stone wall on our property, not on the property behind us.
anybody else? Rick, you mentioned that you would prefer to see the fence moved from the stone wall in a bit?
I think a good practice and a good compromise here is some number of linear feet from the edge of the watercourse, on-site or off-site, but back away so that you can have a corridor along the watercourse. And then you have the protected space around the house. You're still segmenting the wetland to some degree, but, you have to assess what the impact is going to be. If they're working around the trees, and they're allowing for the overland flows, and you're not obstructing the watercourse, and you're getting the fence out of the deepest, most flooded space on the property during the peak of a 100-year storm. Don't forget that our storms that we had were so localized from a couple of years ago that there may not have been flooding on Hamilton like there was on Stony Brook.
The street closed. Our street was actually flooded.
So,
People
Well, that was
couldn't-
between 21, probably going down to.
Yes, it was because of the.
Across to your
yes.
neighbor to the west, Ingers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But just to sort of follow up on that point, it's going to be in front of the stone wall. So how many feet further in are you suggesting? Because it really does affect sort of the property value from a resale perspective in 20 years or 30 years if we're going to sell it, and the fence is not on sort of a logical sort of property line perspective. Because it's not going to be near this water course that doesn't have water in it. It's about, the stone wall is, so, gosh, visual representation, but it's probably 5 to 10 feet from the edge of the beginning of the ditch, because the stone wall is not even close to the border of where the ditch begins. I mean, it's like a foot behind, I guess, like at the length of a foot. I mean, would that not suffice? Because it really would help us. There are trees that sort of start in front of the rock wall. And if we're now having to move the fence further in, then we're now sort of having to work around trees that were, I don't know how logistically it would actually be feasible in some areas in the back.
Right?
I mean, I think that is a commission decision. I think if you're saying that, come back with a plan that shows an alternative, and the commission members can go out and come to some agreement as to what is appropriate. I mean, a foot, I think that's kind of defeatist in terms of,
I just think the rock
predicate-
wall is a foot from. It's inside the rock wall. So if you're talking total feet, it's at least 5 feet from the edge of the stream.
So is that enough to supply a corridor
At
and allow
least
for the
10?
use? I mean, I think that we have to be certain what that number is, and then equal application with the other one, the other property as well.
See, the other application, quite frankly, 16, 14, I have more issues with, because there's a lot more intercourses, a lot more courses of water from the east of them, from Hamilton Lane itself, coming down there, and there's not, while there's wetlands here, there's not a real water course on 16. On 14, there clearly is.
Is there a way we can, because I didn't see it in the application, but get a schematic from you?
Sure,
I know, and
what
where
would
you
be
could
the
show
best?
where the stone wall is
Sure.
Yeah.
and where the proposed fence might be
Sure.
in relation to the ditch or the drainage behind,
Sure.
just so we can have it a little bit in scale and a little bit of understanding.
I don't know if this would answer the questions, but the original application included the survey of the land, and then it showed where the fence was drawn inside of where the rock wall. I mean, I can show you on that where the rock wall is. I think it might be represented there,
Okay.
but I can take pictures if it's. I don't know how I could do aerial
Maybe you
pictures.
can
We don't have a
highlight it
drone.
on the map?
Pardon me?
Even if you can like highlight it on the map or something, I don't see like a.
Where the
I don't
rock
see
wall
any
is, it doesn't
key.
demonstrate.
The
Yeah.
wall is on the survey.
Where?
Okay.
Oh, this down here?
Yes.
Down here?
Mhm.
Okay. It doesn't say that.
Well, that's a symbol.
Oh,
for a
those are
wall.
rocks. Those are rocks?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
So we have the survey.
So the rock wall's on two sides of the,
Yeah, the rock wall's on the
Okay.
southern side, and then it sort of turns on the west side and goes down. But I think Rick is referring to the southern portion, because that's where the ditch is that belongs to the Heidi's on Rabbit Lane.
So on the survey,
Yes.
if you could, because I'm not seeing where the fence might be.
The fence is not represented on the survey. It was represented on the property
Yeah.
line, the first application part. Sorry for that
Okay.
clarification, confusion. Our sort of goal of this was to make it.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's like a perimeter fencing, but.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Rick has said this well. There's a balancing act, because the homeowners want to have the safety, and particularly I understand with children. On the other hand, the soil scientist has declared your property or that piece of property at the corner as being wetlands.
Actually, that corner is not on our wetland survey, part of the wetlands on our property. So the wetland survey that we
Yep.
had done
Yep.
is only on the southwestern part, where there are all of these trees and where our garden goes. And there is no wetland delineation
Right here?
on the, yeah, can I come?
Sure, of course,
Yes,
sure, please.
absolutely.
Please clarify.
Yeah, so here, I think is where the where Rick is talking about, right? Is that right? You're talking about the corner here along the whole rock wall. The stream is closest in this area, and
Yep.
it's furthest in here because there are other fences, and I don't actually even know how the stream runs. It would probably be at least 20 feet in this location, but
Okay.
here it's the closest. But this is not where the wetlands.
Oh, no, I was
boundary-
talking about this part here.
Okay, so if we're talking about here in terms of where the deer fence would go, it's at least, I'm trying to think of my feet in terms of how long they are. 15 feet at least from where the rock wall is and then where the ditch goes, because we have there's a huge backyard in that corner that connects with the other house on Hamilton.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But so the rock wall is your property line, basically?
It's a shared property line, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a shared.
So the fence would already be in the property?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
I mean, I'm happy to take pictures or a video of, I don't know, I just don't know how I could represent it from above aerially to demonstrate the.
No, I think,
Got it.
I think we get it at
Okay,
this point. Yeah,
okay.
I get it.
Okay.
Yep. Or at least I do, anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
I can't speak for anyone
No,
else.
well,
Bill, you've been quiet.
Yeah, I don't have too much trouble with it, as is. As long as there's a little bit of quarter between that stone wall and the water course, not on their property, I guess it's behind them on the other property. I don't have too much of trouble with the fence. I don't like fences that everybody coordinates all over the place, but I understand the safety concerns that everybody has, and I wish people didn't have those concerns, but they do. So, Darien is fencing themselves in all over the place. It's unfortunate.
Lauren?
No, I think if there is a water course, moving the fence a little bit in would also be a nice compromise. I think I have to agree with you guys. I guess I would want to see what that looked like if it were, if we were to do that and you were to consider doing that. I don't think it would, and maybe it could be like, maybe you could have some sort of gate so you could still access that piece if you needed to get back there or something. I don't know, into that area. I don't know, just kind of thinking out loud.
yeah,
Those are just my thoughts.
If is the primary corner in the piece of the fence that you're concerned about primarily, is that the
Is this where the
area?
water is?
Because the stream
Down
is
here,
on the
down
other.
here, right?
The stream parallels the
The water.
The
wall.
Yeah.
But there's no water.
Where's the water?
There's none.
I don't know.
No, I'm telling you, I'm
Okay.
not trying to be like
Yeah.
lighthearted about it. There's literally no water. It's just a ditch. Like the neighbors like blow their leaves into it. Like we do not.
Oh.
We do not. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, but I mean, people. But it's empty. There's no running water.
Can somebody go take a look at it and tell us where the water course, like how far it is from the water course? I mean, I haven't been out there, so I don't actually know, but.
I figure it was 5 feet from the
From
stone
the
wall.
Do you think it's 5 feet from the stone wall?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. Right. No, I'm
you
just.
know,
Yeah.
my estimate is, Rick, what do you think?
If we put it
What
5
would
feet
you- would you
in
say
from
it's
the rock
5
wall,
feet?
would that be sufficient? If we moved it like, in consideration of the trees, would that suffice if it's 10 feet total? I mean, is there like a number of feet that would be agreeable here to work with? I'm really worried about the trees. Like, I don't want to take any down. I really don't. And we kind of walked it with the land, like the fence company, about how we would make it work, and we're not going to take any trees down to make this work. So like I guess how do we balance what's the higher priority here?
And maybe Lauren, you might want to answer that. I don't know if you do.
The expert over here might want.
I mean, I think you have to make a determination. I mean,
I think it's hard to, I
Yeah.
think Rick has said his piece. I think the four of us, and unfortunately it's the four of us,
Yeah.
have to make some sort of determination here as to what, as to significant impact, not significant impact, because whatever we decide here is going to affect,
The next
the next application. And so I think we have to be conscious of whatever we're thinking about, in consideration of the next one.
I mean, maybe the thing to do is to grab an extension letter for, some period of time. If you want to go out and look at it again, or if they can map where this is, and then there's some going to be a determination of what is in my opinion, again, I'm not a big fence person, but I understand people's concerns about, about providing some safety. But again, at the same time, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, good practice. Good practice is have a setback along the stream. If it has water in it or not, it could be intermittent. There is an actual channel back there, and I think you know that. There is a channel. What is an appropriate area, and then it could be actually shown right on the plan, and a consistent application of that setback on the other property as well. So an extension, it could be an email tomorrow, grant the
Okay.
board an extension some number of times, give you an opportunity to go look at it again.
Okay, for those people, I
The
was there
owner.
today, so.
How long is an extension?
You
Like,
could-
how long does that take? I'm
Well, you
just,
can't grant an extension of more than 65 days. So,
I mean-
but if you grant the 65 days, they can decide it next time.
sure. This has been a very long process for us. We started this in March, and I understand the need to do due diligence and be thorough with our review, but I'm willing to make a concession to move it in a certain number of feet. But I would rather sort of work together now, if possible, to make that agreement, rather than have to wait another 2.5 months, and then we're into the fall.
Well, you don't have to wait 2.5 months if it.
Well, I'm just talking about the longest possible sort of timeline, given all the other competing
No,
priorities.
it would never, it's basically to give, Lauren who hasn't visited, I don't know if Peter's visited or not, Bill has, I have. And
Okay.
the other commissioners who aren't here, so it'd be whatever our next meeting is in August, I guess.
You guys that have been there, I mean, do you have something in your head that, you say if it was moved in, 5 feet or whatever, then that, I would be okay with that? Is that from your
I
perspective?
think so, but again,
Yeah.
I'm always hesitant to speak for, I can speak for myself, okay?
Uh-huh.
And as Bill and Peter can speak for themselves, but I would hesitate to say, oh, I think you'll be okay with this, Lauren, and.
Yeah,
and-
I mean,
and- and not,
I've studied the maps, I understand. So, if you all think that that's okay, I'm agreeable to, a number if you want to.
What do you think, Peter?
Get on the
Because
same
Peter, because Bill's come out and said that he's okay with the perimeter sorts of thing here.
The only thing I'll tie it into, I didn't really examine the other piece next to it.
Can we
And-
be taken separately, though? Because I don't think it's,
See, you don't
There will
cross
be
the water
some.
course,
our
okay?
property is different. And I don't think that we should be subject and beholden to the same stipulations and requirements of a different property with different sort of pieces of.
I don't think they said that.
That's fair, we just want to be.
But I don't think they said that.
No, I just want
Consistent.
to, I just want to.
You don't have a you don't have a water course on your property, you have wetlands, but not a water course.
Correct.
Okay, and one of the things that, a cardinal rule that I have is, I don't want fences crossing water
Sure,
courses.
sure.
Okay, and so if the water course was on your property, if it was on your property, the southern one, and you'd said, no, I would like to put a fence across that, et cetera, it just would be a no-go with me.
Sure.
Okay, and so I understand they have water courses literally on their property, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I would 100% agree with you when you say, well, I understand you got issues with theirs. That's them, not you. Okay, and so and so I would say, from a personal opinion, I'm okay with the way it is as a perimeter fence. But I have Lauren and Peter also have to think about things here as to what they would what you guys consider sufficient in order to.
So there are a lot of properties that have wetlands, soggy grass, and they have fences around them.
Sure.
So I'm gonna start with that. And you're not seeing a water course on your properties, I can determine. So fundamentally, I don't have an issue with this application, because I think, I also agree with Bill, I really don't care for fences, but that's not my prerogative in making this decision.
It's
You're
not
the
our-
homeowner and you want some safety, and it's for your family, and it's to ensure that coyotes don't
Yeah.
go after your children and dogs, and I understand that, actually. So I'm gonna say would be in Bill's camp, that I don't really see there having to be a significant setback from the stone wall, because I think the stone wall is the property line, and I don't think that that is, part of the water course. And there's a significant difference between the farmer's ditch or the drain and the stone wall, because they wouldn't have built the stone wall right up on it.
You're right, yeah, no, okay, thank you, thank you.
That's where I would come out.
So have we beaten this to death? All right. Rick, I think we have a consensus of the commission here that, to approve this as.
We've drafted a resolution.
And so if you wouldn't mind drafting a resolution on this one?
Thank you all for your time and your feedback and input on this. I know it's late and I didn't mean to take up so much of your evening, and
Thank you for coming.
we don't
Thank
really
you
like
for-
fences
We love
either,
talking
and
to
I really-
homeowners.
I know, I really appreciate, I separate from this application, I really appreciate environmental protection in this town. I think it's super crucial and important, and hearing you talk about trees being taken down at oak trees, I don't know what this oak tree is, but it made me sad, so I thank you
Well,
for.
you never know. So at some point, there may be an opening on this
Oh, I
commission.
don't know, you don't want me out there. Look at how late you're here now.
Yeah, well,
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, do we need to, for next steps in terms of, I'll
Next
make.
step is up to Rick.
Okay.
Next step is up to Rick.
Okay,
Okay, Rick's going to write a draft resolution,
Okay.
which we'll consider in our meeting in August, and.
oh, so we still have to wait the next 30,
That
okay.
step can't be
Okay. Okay.
bypassed. Yep.
Yeah,
Is it possible, while we wait for the interim, to put up just the white part that would touch from the house to the stone wall? It's just to keep our dog in the back.
Is that
It's
within
kind
our
of been a
jurisdiction?
nightmare.
Yes.
is that within our jurisdiction? Yes, it's within our jurisdiction, or yes, they can
Yes.
put it up?
No, yes, it's in the jurisdiction. It's
I
also in
can
the
wait, I
floodplain.
just thought, while I'm here with you all.
Yeah, I think you
it's-
should wait.
I'll just
until
wait
it's
then.
formally
No
approved.
problem, no problem.
And the reason also is, it hasn't been approved as
Underst-
of tonight, and we
okay.
have other commissioners
Okay.
that, might still, weigh in
Sure.
on the approval itself.
Okay, so we're not approved, we have to wait 30 days, but we're
Looking good.
looking like we will be
Yeah,
approved
and-
by August?
Yes.
Yes,
Maybe? Okay.
Yes,
yes.
Okay.
And this is not an extra step. This would be the ordinary step that we would take.
Okay, perfect, thank
Just
you.
so know.
Do I need to plan on coming back in August for the?
No.
review? Okay, perfect, thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
thank you. Okay, the next item of business is EPC 15-2023, 14 Hamilton Lane, Leicester and Leicester. Okay, to install a fence in and within close proximity to the wetlands, water courses, and special flood hazard areas. Property lies within the south side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 670 feet west of Brookside, and is identified as map number 10, lot number 22, zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.128 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, similar to the last application, again, this is a fence in and within close proximity to wetlands and water courses. The property supports a single-family dwelling, paved drive, walkways, patio, sheds, and other related features. Dwelling served by sanitary and sewer public water. Site is characterized by upland developed space, wetlands held as both woodland and lawn grass. The difference is on this application, there's also a small perennial water course that cuts a back section of the property. So there's the intermittent water course, or water course that parallels the rear property boundary, but this one also has an intermittent water course that is tributary to that larger channel. The entire site is, again, tributary to the west of the Good Wives River. Property is also fairly substantially, as depicted on their plans, within the flood zone. And just so you know, that there has been, the commission has participated in the replacement of the dwelling on this property in 2020. Staff has participated in some other de minimis activities that were confined to areas outside of the regulated areas. The fence is reflected on the plans, and in this case, the applicant has also provided an alternative location as reflected on the plan. 6-foot-high solid vinyl fence in the vicinity of the dwelling, and an 8-foot-high plastic deer fencing on the remainder of the site. In the most extensive alternative, the upland review area, about 185 square feet of the upland review area, 336 square feet of wetlands, and 532 square feet of the special flood area are going to be impacted by the fence. Fence, again, selectively installed above grade to allow for the passage of stormwater, movement of small forms of wildlife. And they too had secured the services of an engineer who indicated that the fence will not exacerbate flooding and remain relatively free of flood damages or contributions to debris field because of its ponded water essentially in through here. Same issues that we outlined, although it's not the 100 of the same circumstances, but the same issues apply. The same issues is, is it going to achieve their development objectives? Is it, what's the resource impacts? Again, this applicant is committed to not taking down large trees in order to install the deer fence. Looking at what the impact is on the dynamics of the flood, what the flood is going to have an impact on the fence, the capacity to maintain the movement of small forms of wildlife, and again, looking at alternatives that is not going to result in the segmenting of a habitat. So, again, as staff would suggest, no crossing of water courses, and one of the alternatives here was, in fact, for a crossing of the smaller water course, maintaining a setback that is going to provide for the movement of wildlife. Again, this is a compromise, movement of wildlife along the stream corridor. If it is raised or is of the composition that's going to allow for the movement of stormwater, if it smaller forms of wildlife will be able to continue to occupy the space, and we're not going to be exacerbating flooding or flood impacts. And again, alternatives are, I think, a big consideration, and to think about what the from this point forward, what the pattern of practice is going to be, or what is going to be for other future fences as well.
Is a representative, is the applicant here a representative?
No.
So, because I would like to have alternatives, okay, because, it's clear in my mind, they want to, this letter from Land Tech, from Andy Sue Melidis,
Yep.
saying that this does not provide any, I'm going,
Well, what he's saying in the letter is that he believes that the flood mapping is not correct, and that it is not going to exacerbate flood conditions because the flood mapping is not as extensive as reflected on the plan.
well, if that's true, so now I have a conflict. I have a legal map here, and he doesn't believe the legal map.
No, but
So it's sort of like, okay, well then.
So he's saying that what's shown on the survey is what's shown on the flood map. Okay, so unless they go and change the flood map, you can't take it out of the flood zone.
Yeah. No, I'm sort of, so I come through with this and I go, without a representative of the person here, okay, I still have a lot of questions as to is if the flood map, if they claiming the flood map's not accurate, okay, prove it. Prove it using the, you
No,
know.
he said even if the flood map is accurate and there's flooding on the property, it's not gonna, what he's saying is not gonna have an adverse impact.
Okay, well,
Now, one thing-
if they're proposing to cross, you know, not a well, you know, a little stream, because they have little streams back there.
Mhm.
Typically, when little streams direct water, they bring down debris with them. Okay, and the fence is gonna catch all that. Okay, and now he's saying no, and I'm going, well, that defies any sort of common sense that I have. Okay, that he says, no, the fence is not gonna catch the debris. And I'm going, well, you know, when I was a little kid, I used to throw objects into streams, and it would block, and it would block. I didn't need an engineering degree to tell me, oh no, that's not going to block it. No, I saw it. So I'm a little frustrated with this, with this Andy coming here, not defending himself, and saying, telling me where I'm wrong, because he's an expert. Okay, he's defying my common sense here. Okay, I have to accept his word. Okay, which is here. I'm almost tempted to ask Jose, Joe Canas, to come here, to hire him at the applicant's expense, to come here and say, and tell me, provide an alternative to this. Okay, if there is an alternative.
So, but in this case, this applicant has provided an alternative, an A and a B.
Okay.
There was a part in here. So the A was cross the water course and follow the property perimeter. The alternate B was to take it to the landward side of the small stream that was on the
All right.
property. So this one said, yeah, we do have an alternative. But what is lacking is if there's going to be to have a super concise, something that we could hold to and construct to. So, and if there's going to be a setback. So they're showing, taking, instead of going to the perimeter, taking to the inside of the channel. But what's a proper setback for all the things that we talked about? Not crossing, so it doesn't become a blockage of stormwater. Is it to the edge of the water course, or is it 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet, 25 feet?
I guess it depends on the size of the water course too. And
Right.
in their case, they have, the water courses, they have, some separation of property from the water course there. They have, and in other cases where the playset is, there's a, there's beautiful green grass going right to the water course.
So we could do, something like I was suggested before. If you're unsatisfied or not satisfied with some of the answers that were provided to date, or the clear depiction of what's there, we can gain an extension, have them come back next month, be clear and concise in their indication of where the fence will be going, and if need be, have the engineer come in and provide some clarification.
I don't know, what do you guys think? Lauren? See when
I
she
like
makes the
that
meeting, kick
idea.
off first.
Good move.
I do, for this one in particular, I like that idea selfishly because like I said, I did move it to these two properties.
Yeah, you have to see it.
So, yeah,
Honestly.
so for that reason as well, and I could go look at the other one. It did occur to me though, as you were kind of talking through feasible and prudent alternatives, not so much of an alternative, but more of an offset, because both of these properties have lawns in, or pieces of lawn, right, in wetlands and floodplains, right? We can agree on that? Both of them have that?
Yes.
That's what I saw on the map.
one, 16 really
Okay.
doesn't, has some there, they have a shed
Yeah,
back
shed
there.
playscape, they have
In it,
lawn.
yeah.
and- Yes.
But they also have-
This is not your grade A marsh. This is, that's why I'm having a little more
I
problem
see.
than everybody else about perimeter, because it's not a,
It doesn't look like a wetland.
it's not, I mean, it is wetlands, but it's not one of those nice marshes.
16, yes. 16, yes, I'll totally agree. It's there. I mean, it wasn't, when I walked on it today, you know, I was expecting squish, squish, squish.
Yeah.
Just because that would indicate to me that there's high water table, if you will. On 14, very clearly, there was a little stream coming down and
Yeah.
things like that at this point from yesterday's rain. So it's hard to compare the two, okay, properties, because one is much
No.
flatter and here and just sort of it's totally overshaded, so grass couldn't grow there anyway.
So I don't want to compare the two. I just want to make the statement that both have the flood zone and the wetlands in that are maintained as lawn, right? In certain areas, right? So what do we typically do when we have, you know, people maintaining and we want to try to offset and they're maintaining wetlands that are lawns? We have them plant stuff. I mean, I know these are just fences, but they're big fences and they're you know, doing harm to the environment and the area. I mean, is planting some stuff, could that be helpful and maybe offset some of the negatives as well? In addition to maybe moving this fence a little bit, is that something, or am I just
Yeah, I think it's I think it's an alternative. I think it's an
Yeah.
alternative. I'd like to see the applicant come in and having heard what you said, come in and think about that and say, well, heard you, and here's my response. Okay, so
Have we ever gone where we've asked fences and said, you know what, knock out some of your lawn?
Yeah.
yeah, we have.
Not for fences, though.
No, not for fences.
That I can
Not for
remember.
fences.
Because
But
fences are fences.
Well, I
Like,
can tell you, one of the first ones I worked on West Avenue,
Yeah.
they did do that.
They did,
put up
for
a
a
fence
fence.
and they did some de minimis planting.
Right.
yeah, like that whole huge planting plan. Like, don't go
Why don't we
bananas,
get a little
but
bit
like
more, you know, aggressive
something
on
to
that?
offset the harm.
Yeah, I think it's a good point.
But you gotta think what the harm
It's a
is,
good
though.
point.
Well, that's I don't know how to
You're gonna think-
quantify this versus that. I mean,
But you gotta
planting
think
a
what the
couple
harm
plants.
is. What's the harm? You're segmenting a
Yeah.
wetland and wetland corridors.
Right, but maybe you're going to
You'll-
help some bats and butterflies and I don't know, by planting some stuff. I don't know. I'm just.
I just, I think the major, and I don't want to beat it to death, but the major element with the fences, I'm not a fence person, I understand them, but I think there's some basic things that you should be doing. Yes, I don't have any problem if they move things onto the interior of that water course, and in fact, the applicant brought it up, maybe doing some de minimis planting between the fence and the
Yeah.
and the water course would be helpful from a filtration standpoint, or to eliminate some of the manicured surface. The other one is, there was no alternative, in their view. This one at least provided an alternative, but have some clarification, there's no
Yes.
problem, we'll get an extension, we'll
Yep.
have them clarify the position, and maybe,
Okay.
And also give you a chance to go visit.
Thank you.
yeah.
Because that would be, and-
So we're gonna be
and-
deferring?
And to encourage, yes, and to encourage the other three members, because hopefully they'll be here in August.
So, but I think, to be fair, since they're wetlands and floodplains, that the planting, could we ask both of them? Is that, or this one should be bigger?
I think it's much more
I don't know.
intrusive. I think 14 is much more intrusive. And actually has, small little water courses going through it. This one doesn't have a water course. It has wetlands, but no water course. And so for me, the wetlands, there are on 16, as well, sir,
Is it-
very low value.
Is it fair? though,
Much
to ask
much
them?
more. They're much higher value on 14. Okay, and you can see it. You can see by the stuff that grows there. Okay, so
It's not their fault, there's a water course on their property, well, it sort of is, but was it fair to ask one and not the other to do some plantings? And I don't know, I'm just, I don't know.
Hey, is it fair that people live near I-95? Okay, he's sort of going, okay, I bought the property like that.
But I think what she's saying is not just the comparison, but if we're gonna start, when we're putting fences in, we've always just said, all right, We don't want the flooding problem, we don't want it to bisect, but you are still making, you're changing it. So why don't you take a little of your lawn out of play? Why don't we put a little more play? Why don't we go that way and try this out? See if,
Yep.
see if, we've been pretty much saying, all right, fence goes in, but let's get a little something from it, that last lady, she's very much
Yeah.
an environmentalist. Let's
Yeah, I
take
feel
out
like
some of
she
your
would do
lawn.
it, right?
Knock out some of your lawn. Let's see if we can get a little more improvement in what she has in the back there while she's putting her fence in. And it's something we could
Yep,
discuss. I'm
Yeah.
just throwing that out as a
yeah.
possibility.
Yeah, but maybe you want to talk to 16 Hamilton and say what, hey, we should talk about the lawn situation. It's a good point.
Okay.
But with 14, it's very clear that it's much more intrusive. All right,
So we're going to defer action,
defer action pending information, pending receipt of
clarification of some of the information that has been submitted.
Okay, can we move on to the next
Yep.
item of business, approval of minutes? May 17, 2023, there was a continued public hearing, a special meeting. I believe all the members got a draft of the minutes. Any questions or comments? Did Jim Malloy?
No,
Oh, gosh.
Tell Jim he may be on vacation.
he's fallen
But,
down.
the internet works.
Don't let him get away with that.
Okay, which since there's no questions or comments, Peter, can I
Yeah,
have a
make a
motion?
motion to approve the minutes from May 17, 2023, continuation of public hearing and special meeting.
Second that.
All in favor? 3 positives,
Sorry.
and you were there for this May 17 meeting?
Yes.
Yes, May 17 I was.
Yes, so it's 4-0. Okay, June 7, so approval of minutes for June 7, 2023, continued public hearing and regular meeting.
Make a
Yes.
motion to approve the minutes of June 7th, continued public hearing and regular meeting.
Second that motion.
All in favor? 3-0, 3-0-1, and now we move on to agent approval, EPC 19-2023, 5 Timber Lane, S. Keefe and C. Seconder to install a fence, playscape, lawn, grass, and native landscaping in or within close proximity to the wetlands. The property lies along the west side of Timber Lane, approximately 375 feet north of Olive Ridge Road, and is identified as map number 3 of lot number 35. The zone is R2 and is approximately 1.686 acres. This is an agent approval.
Chairman, I conducted this review as an agent approval, believing that it qualified because of the de minimis impact. Just for the record, it started off being an inquiry to the office where there was some tree cutting on the property. 1 or 2 trees had been removed from regulated areas. They were left in place. The applicant stopped. They hired design professionals to come up with not only a restoration element, but also an improvement plan for a portion of their rear yard where there is currently, there's a single-family dwelling, there is a subsurface sewage disposal well, drive, walkways, et cetera, on the property. It does have a gently sloping developed lands around the house and light to lighter wooded wetlands and a water course on the property, on 2 pieces of the property. The ones to the, I believe it's the east, are untouched. It's the ones to the south and west where the tree cutting had occurred. The applicant is proposing in a space that's currently maintained as lawn or Pachysandra to define a limit aligned with the existing driveway, align a fence line, and to install plantings for the purpose of remove debris, do other amenities in the wetlands that are both historic and new, but remove the debris and add planting for multiple purposes. To filter runoff from the newly seeded lawn they want to install, to increase the wildlife habitat value. They're doing plantings on the, let's call it the waterward side of the fencing, to provide some screening to the street that lies to the rear of the property. And all those elements were outlined on the plan that was prepared by Barbara Wilson. So the planting plan is very comprehensive. The fence was going to serve as a demarcation feature. The plan has things like Atlanta white cedar, sweet gum, holly, green giant arborvitae, that's probably with the screening purposes, clethra, hydrangea, cardinal flowers, cinnamon ferns, and other things as well. So staff an application was submitted. I felt it falls within the purview of an agent approval. The plans are referenced, and the conditions of an approval are included in this draft. And unless there's issues with the proposal, I'm prepared to send it out promptly.
Does any commissioner have questions or comments for Rick?
No, I
So they
love these
they were
plans.
cutting trees down in regulated areas without a permit, and that
Yes.
was what started the whole.
Yes,
ball
well, that was
rolling?
what prompted the
Okay,
call to the
I see.
office.
Someone called you guys? to
Yep.
go? Okay.
And then Rick went out and made friends.
Got it. Yes, I remember this. This was May? Was this May?
It was probably
Yeah.
earlier than that.
Okay, and so whatever happened with do they have to pay a fine, or what's the
No, no
protocol?
fines.
Is there there's nothing?
No, I
Okay.
mean, if you ever pursued into the end of an enforcement action that goes to court, there can be fines imposed, but in this case, they had a tree removal service come in, took down a couple trees.
For what
and-
purpose?
Well, the one tree that was truly in the wetlands, I do have photographs of it, was hazardous.
Oh.
I mean, it was a hazardous
Okay.
tree, and there were some other trees that were taken down because they were intent on doing some of the improvements to the rear yard space. So there was probably one tree in wetlands and maybe one and some other de minimis kinds of things in the upland review area. They were also proposing a playscape, and that was going to be in the upland review, or they moved it as part of the review process outside. So the regulated areas are for the fence, the regenerated lawn, and the replanting. And just to get it in the record, it's just a 4-foot-high picket fence. It's going to allow for the continued flow of stormwater, the movement of wildlife between point A and point B in their rear yard. Buffers of ranging from about 5 to up to 50 feet between there and the wetlands are being provided. 858 square feet of the upland review area. There's not going to be any additional trees lost. They're providing erosion controls as necessary, et cetera.
Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so no need to vote?
There's no vote on this.
There's no vote on this, and he'll publish it, and et cetera. Okay, other business, just want to find out, take attendance. Our next meeting is Wednesday, August 2. Okay, and I wanted to get a sense of, thank you, I'm sorry I had to wait for the whole time. Right? So, Rick, I'll be here. Peter, are you going to be
Yes.
here August 2?
It's my life, I'll be here.
Someone's got to do it.
I'll confirm. I'm pretty sure I'll be here.
Okay, if you could confirm to Rick,
Yes.
so, because,
I'm-
August is always problematic for the obvious reason.
Okay.
But I just wanted, since I had 4 of you here tonight, the 4 of us here tonight, to go through. And I believe, who else, Michael, we gotta find out, Malarkey be back.
Carolyn, you
Carolyn,
can ask her. She'll probably be here.
okay, we'll find out.
You'll convince her.
Yeah, well, she's on vacation. She was already on vacation, so she can't go again.
Yeah, well. Anyway, okay, so anyway, that was good, I just wanted to find out. Okay, anything else, Rick? Motion to adjourn?
The only other thing I could say is that, didn't forget about you. I collected a whole whole bunch of regulations from other communities with the purpose of, when time allows, to revise our regulations.
Good.
I'm not so sure that there's that much to be revised, but things to think about if we want to have provisions for notice on most of our applications, as some of the other communities do. You know, there are some certain clarifications that we should have, you know, there should be in there. I did talk to somebody in Fairfield, they just redid their regulations just like last week. They had their vote. Darien's and Fairfield's are almost exact. So we're having discussions about where they felt they needed to improve their regulations. So we have some ideas, and then there are some. There was only one legislative change in the last 6 years or so, having to do with extensions that should be included. You know, Jim spent a ton of time correcting the deficiencies in the language that's in there. So there are some changes, probably not as much as we think, which is great. They did a good job last time.
Has Greenwich responded?
Yes, we got theirs, we got Stanford, we got Norwalk,
Oh, excellent.
Fairfield,
Oh,
I
good.
think New Canaan, et cetera.
Do you have them in a, yeah, okay, do you have them?
I saved them electronically.
You
so-
save them electronically,
Yeah,
even
so-
better. I don't know, because I'd like to just,
So I can send them to you so you can start thinking about, you know, some of the things that you may want to have included. One thing I do want to have included, though, is, you know, where our area of jurisdiction is. There are two kind of areas, you know, like it says 100 feet of 5 Mile River.
was it named river sources, I recall?
Well, they actually name them in the regulation, but where does it start? Where does it end? I have opinions that have been offered where 5 Mile River formally ends and the, you know, where the coastal embayment starts, and got opinions from Norwalk, what they do with the border. So it's good to be as clear as possible.
Sure,
You know,
sure.
and there's no sense being redundant in some of these applications where it's done, there are no inland wetlands, and it's a matter of, there's going to be a coastal site plan review application for the zoning. But those are things that we should be clear about.
Good, thank you for doing that homework.
Yeah, we got some other homework to do too. We still have to do drainage agreements and landscape agreements, and you know, our paperwork that the contractors have to sign, that acknowledging the existence of the permit, and it takes a little bit of work with, you know, an outside counsel to review these things.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's pretty
Sure,
much
Wayne
it.
Fox would be happy.
So would we have a meeting separate to review this stuff, potentially?
You would have to have a public hearing to change the regulations, and maybe we should, you know, formulate like
You
a
may
work
have-
group.
Does it have to go to the RTM?
I think it does.
I'm pretty sure it does.
Yes,
I-
it
as-
does.
So, because.
But we want to review it first, right?
No, no,
The changes?
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
How do we as a group look at it?
We have to approve it first. That's
We
the
might
first-
have like
Right.
work sessions.
Oh,
You
is
know.
that what, yeah, a work session that's open to the public, I mean, everything's so.
Well, I think it probably, we have a work
Wait, can you guys
session.
just, we can come
Amongst,
to my
work session amongst
house,
ourselves.
I think you have a work
have some
session,
beers.
and you formulate
good to
some
me.
changes.
Sprinkler systems that you have.
You
That'd be
formulate
pretty
the
cool.
changes, and then you present the changes in a public forum, in the public hearing format.
Yep, yep.
So, that should be maybe in the next couple of months, we could start getting more engaged with that.
Good.
Okay.
Great. Peter, motion to adjourn?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the EPC meeting of July 5th, 2023.
Second motion?
All in favor? Good night, Channel 79. We're off the air.